The new My Hero Academia anime is actually surprisingly good. The Beginning After the End is quickly shaping up to be one of the most pointless adaptations in recent memory. Yaiba features some of the best 2D animation I've seen in a while, and the ongoing spring season is home to a surprisingly large number of hidden gems. Welcome back to another episode of This Month in Anime, or is it this week? I'm not entirely sure. Has it been a month since the last one? Who cares? Make sure to subscribe.
Superhero landing!
My Hero Academia Vigilantes. I knew I'd like this show and I like it even more. That made no grammatical sense. MHA Vigilantes is good, right? It really is. The first episode of it genuinely piqued my interest, more so than the main series, dare I say. Is that blasphemy? I've said worse. There are several things about Vigilantes that stood out to me, and on top of that, it seems like the show by its very nature will address a bunch of problems I had with the main show. Keep in mind, I am going off of the first episode and the premise. A lot of this section will consist of me speculating as to what this series will be like. I don't know how the story will unfold, this is just the way I think it will. Got it? Great. Firstly, I like the core concept behind Vigilantes a lot more than the main series. I love the idea of our heroes not being officially recognized. In the main story, the heroes are these sheltered, government-backed, naive children who have the right to beat the f*** out of petty criminals, and they are cheered by the masses for doing so. I don't know, something about that feels so dystopian. Vigilantes characters, on the other hand, aren't recognized by the government, and something that simple makes me want to root for them more. They are outlaws, they are underdogs, they are more fun to watch. Besides that, I like Koichi as a main character. He's not starry-eyed to an obnoxious degree unlike a certain other green-haired character. He is a bit cheesy, yes, but he's cheesy in an endearing way, unlike Deku, who's cheesy in a "can I get another Shigaraki flashback instead of him" way. I think Koichi feels more flawed and therefore more human. The way he hesitates before deciding, trying and failing to help Pop Step, I think stuff like that humanizes him. He's not this grand living embodiment of heroism, he's just a person with a strong moral compass, and I personally find that to be a lot more organic and compelling. Besides all that, Vigilantes looks great. In terms of all-around aesthetics, I think it's actually better than the main series, although it is worth mentioning that it won't as much as touch the main show in terms of animation peaks, that won't happen. Still, in terms of the overall look, art direction, compositing and the execution of that cartoony comic book-like aesthetic, I think Vigilantes is better. The actual 2D animation is fairly solid as well. I'm really looking forward to the rest of this show. I hope it keeps up with my expectations. The Beginning After the End, a highly anticipated adaptation of a popular source material. Let's talk about it. Also, just so you know, I have read the webcomic I did so recently. Oh boy, this is what a bad, pointless adaptation actually looks like. To those of you who kept complaining about Sakamoto Days not looking good enough, do you see this? This is a real bland, ambitionless adaptation. This is it. The first 2 episodes of tbate made Sakamoto Days look like Mob Psycho. Now, usually I try to avoid hating on a show in a one-sided manner. I try to look for the good alongside the bad, but there's nothing about the tbate anime that deserves praise. There just isn't. It's the most generic, by the numbers, lowest common denominator adaptation out there. I'm not surprised, of course, believe it or not, this is what your typical seasonal anime looks like. Not Sakamoto Days, not Solo Leveling, this. That might be a shocking revelation to those of you who only watch the big stuff every season, but I'm used to it. The tbate anime is visually bland. The designs don't stand out, the shot compositions are cookie cutter, the art direction and compositing range from extremely unremarkable to borderline obnoxious. The animation, aka the movement, is practically non-existent. It's not good at all. All of that would have been bad enough already, but I have other reasons to dislike this adaptation. Firstly, like I said near the start, I have read the webcomic, I am familiar with the story. Naturally, while watching this show, a lot of my attention gravitates towards the production, causing me to be overly critical. Secondly, I and most of you have already seen a significantly better looking version of this exact premise before. The first episode of Mushoku Mushoku Tensei. I know that's an unfair and an unnecessary comparison, but my brain can't help but think of one when looking at the other given how eerily similar the two titles are. Just compare Arthur using magic and destroying his house to Rudy doing the same thing. Again, I know it's not fair, but just look at the sheer difference in everything. And it's not just about the visuals not being good, it's about the anime doing the absolute bare minimum, it's about the anime just going through the motions. It's not good. Anyway, let's move on. Yaiba. It is easily the best looking anime airing this season. The first episode of it was an absolute masterclass of raw 2D animation. The energy-packed, snappy, post-to-post Kanada school animation drawn by the likes of Takeshi Minami, Aito Ohashi, Hiroshi Shinomoto, and of course Yoshimichi Kameda was an absolute joy to watch. I won't say much here because I will make if not multiple videos about it, but I will say this: if for whatever reason you aren't watching this show, please do so. Of course, that only applies to those of you who care about animation quality and the like. Story-wise, there's not much going on, in my opinion. I would have probably enjoyed it if I was like 10. I believe that's the target audience, but unfortunately I'm not. New section alert, call it the openings corner or something, I don't know.
From the screen to the ring to the pen to the key.
This season is home to a ridiculously large number of visually incredible openings, and as such, let's talk about a few of them. The opening for Witch Watch was directed and storyboarded by Megumi Ishitani, and it was breathtaking. Ishitani, of course, is one of, if not the best director from the One Piece team. She directed the recent One Piece fan letter, among other things. The OP featured a bunch of Ishitani-isms, be it the match cuts centered around an object, the title card in this case, which resembled her use of circles in that One Piece opening, or the style of compositions which resembled that other One Piece opening. It was so good. The animation actually kept up with her ambition thanks to the ridiculous lineup of animators involved: Tetsuya Takeuchi, Toshiyuki Sato, Kenichi Kutsuna, Moang, Ikuo Gesso, Masayuki Nonaka, and many more. Such an amazing OP. If this was any other season, it would have easily been the best, and it still probably is, but not that easily. The OP for Shoshimin Season 2 looked insanely good. In fact, in terms of pure visual creativity, I think it outdid the Witch Watch OP. It's hard to describe, really. Director Kyohei Ishiguro used silhouettes, photorealism juxtaposed with abstract art, literal live-action footage, cutouts, and everything in between. It was a kaleidoscope of creativity. The OP for Yaiba, as you'd expect, was packed with an absurd amount of animation power. They didn't even wait for the chorus to drop, they started showing off from the very first note. The OP was directed and storyboarded by Ikuo Gesso, or as I like to call him, the OPs that give you an epileptic attack man. Gesso did an incredible job, but ultimately it was the raw 2D animation that did the heavy lifting. The MHA Vigilantes OP was one of the more stylish ones out of the lot. It absolutely nailed the vibrant comic book-like aesthetic and featured a respectable amount of animation power. The openings for Fire Force Season 3, the Shiunji Family Children, and Windbreaker Season 2 all looked amazing and featured a bunch of animation highlights. Windbreaker in particular, and the OP for From Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman was surprisingly well put together, especially for what appears to be a typical fantasy. One last OP worth talking about is the one for the brilliant healer's New Life in the Shadows, a show I'll talk about in a bit. The OP was far from perfect, but it did feature a few insanely ambitious shots. Again, the execution was very much lacking, but I have to appreciate the effort. And those were the noteworthy openings. Let's now go through a bunch of those aforementioned hidden gems, starting with Sword of the Demon Hunter, one of the most interesting shows airing this season. Notice how I said interesting and not good? Yeah, that's for a reason. Let's talk about the story first. The plot of this show is extremely unique. I've never seen anything like it before, never. I mean, come on. Going around Japan from the days gone by, killing demons with a special sword? What are we, some kind of demon slayers? Also, the protagonist's younger sister is a demon, a nice one at that. I mean, what are we, some kind of demon slayer? In all seriousness, the premise isn't earth-shattering, although I did like the complete 180 they did near the end of episode 1. I won't spoil it of course, but it was good. The interesting thing about this show, however, is not the story, which was fine, it's the visuals. Again, notice how I said interesting and not good. The first episode of Sword of the Demon Hunter was simultaneously one of the best directed and storyboarded, and one of the most visually broken episodes I've seen in a while. The episode was over 50 minutes long and it was directed wonderfully. The storyboards were visually really dynamic, meaningful, and ambitious. They were clearly a cut, or rather several cuts above the industry average. This episode was directed by Norifumi Kiyozumi and storyboarded by series director Kazuya Ayura, and both of them did an incredible job. Unfortunately, the episode was completely broken. The animation fully fell apart at multiple points. It was like the second half of Hell's Paradise, but on steroids. Of course, the very first episode of a show being this broken is extremely concerning. In fact, everything about this production is concerning. Based on what I could gather, the first episode of this show was being worked on a while back, but despite that, some of the scenes shown in the trailer looked very different from the ones shown in the episode, meaning they were making last-minute changes. I'm not sure what happened. It's so interesting. The studio behind this show, Yokohama Animation Lab, is no stranger to crippling production issues. The New Gate, a show produced by the company, also fell apart from the very first episode, and Whisper Me a Love Song, another Yokohama Animation Lab project, was such a mess that its Blu-ray release just straight up got cancelled, which is absurd. There's a story in there somewhere, I don't know what it is yet, but it's there. Anyway, despite the broken animation, I can't help but appreciate the ambition. I could feel the thought and effort that went into each shot composition. Do I wish it was executed better? Absolutely, but this show still is more interesting visually than most. I highly recommend checking it out. On a similar note, The Brilliant Healer's New Life in the Shadows was another ambitious show that lacked in the execution department, although in this case, the difference between the ambition and the execution was not that large. This show marks Studio Makaria's TV anime debut, and the first episode of it genuinely impressed me. It wasn't anything out of this world, far from it, but the action scenes had that extra bit of ambition, if that makes sense. The storyboards were more dynamic than usual, the shots moved more, the action was fun to watch. Look at this, it looks cool, doesn't it? All things considered, I feel like this show is worth keeping an eye on, especially if you care about the way a show looks and don't have sky-high expectations. Story-wise, there's nothing of note, by the way, it's just a typical power fantasy. Moving on, Rock is a Lady's Modesty had one of the most enjoyable first episodes this season. It was stupidly fun. The show is set in a high-class all-girls school where students are expected to be all prim and proper. Our main characters, however, are rock musicians, not very ladylike some might say, and the show makes sure to hammer in that dichotomy from the get-go. Seriously, they couldn't be more on the nose if they tried, and I'm fine with that. Visually, the show looked decent. The performance scenes were mostly 3D, and I think they looked good. Sure, a few wide shots looked a bit wonky, but as a whole, the 3D helped sell the intensity of the instrument playing. The performance was quite the audiovisual experience, it was mesmerizing. Besides all that, the episode was surprisingly well directed. It made use of symbolism in the form of reflections, peepholes, and cages, meant to represent the characters caring a lot about the way they are seen and perceived by the ones around them, and them being trapped by these societal expectations. It's great, it looks good, it sounds good, it's endearingly over the top. I think I'll enjoy this one quite a bit. Speaking of good CGI use, From Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman is a fairly laid-back, matured fantasy with fantastic 3D animation. Like, look at this. This is some of the best 3D character animation I've seen in anime. Story-wise, I could spot a few trashy fantasy-isms, but as a whole, it's a lot more cohesive and focused. It's worth checking out, in my opinion. Zatsutabi That's Journey is another matured, laid-back show. It gives off strong Eurocamp vibes, and in no universe is that a bad thing. Also, the art direction looks quite nice. I recommend giving it a shot. And that should just about do it. Liked the video? Check out this other bit of content on screen, like and subscribe, and until next time.